Well, it's almost March, so that means we should do a February market farm tour. So as many of you know, Britain has been battling storms for the past week, and it's the reason why the garden looks a bit of a mess, because stuff has been thrown all over the place. There's bits of felt here off the roof, there's sticks and pieces of metal that have been thrown over, and so I really need to go round and do a massive clear up of just stuff that's been thrown around. But we are also facing another battle on this farm, and that is one against pests. Now, I shouldn't call them pests because of course it's wildlife, and here at Brimwood Farm we are working in a regenerative way to accept and bring in wildlife. But during these winter months, everything on this farm wants to eat everything that I've planted. And there's a couple of reasons. A, it is winter, and so there is less food around. So obviously, if I'm growing food that's readily accessible to voles and mice and rabbits and deer, they're going to come and eat it. And B, because it's winter, everything grows much more slowly, which means it's vulnerable to attack because it doesn't have the time to grow new leaves before, once again, the voles or the rabbits or the deer come along and munch, munch, munch. So at this time of year, I really haven't got a vast amount in the garden because the things that I have trialled have got eaten. We have got our garlic and our onion beds though. They are a little bit flattened. You can see where the storm hit, where these really got flattened down by, that was Storm Eunice. But we're getting our rows, and last time I talked about the issue with the red onions not coming up, whereas the garlic and the white onions are all starting to grow out. However, it does seem to be that they just take a little bit longer because we now suddenly start to have the red onions appearing. So I'm really happy with these 3 rows of plants. And you can see obviously down here there's less. This is where the red onions are, but they're coming. And we've got our onions and our garlic. Now you'll see in a lot of places on my market farm that there's loads of sticks. And that's because I use these sticks to cover the crops. It doesn't stop mice, it doesn't stop voles, but it does stop some of the bigger birds coming in, the rooks and the pigeons for example, and pulling them all out of the ground. When I also put new transplants out, they're vulnerable to being pulled out, and rabbits. So again, I go along and I cover the rows in sticks until they're really sort of well established. So this row was all covered in sticks originally, but you can see now most of them are nice, although they've got battered here, look, really battered by the storm, but they'll survive. Apart from this one that's been pulled out. Where did you belong? You seem to have sown yourself. You must have been lying there for a while actually. Let's put you in here. Come on. There you go, back in a little hole. Now here it might look like I've got loads growing, but actually this is mostly weeds. We've got some spinach down here that has survived. Now this was heavily planted with spinach all the way down, but you can see we've had quite a lot of losses with pests and wildlife coming in. The chard is here, but the chard, all of this chard is not really edible. It looks okay on first instinct, and then you come down and actually there's a lot of old sort of blemishes. You can't sell that. So this will all be sheep, goat, pig food. There's a little bit of kale left, but this isn't really enough for selling. But I do love, and I don't know if you're the only one, if I'm the only one, but it tastes so good. Those little kale flowery hearts, yum. Now, our polytunnel experiment to grow lettuces and radishes through the winter didn't work. And it only didn't work because we had Vole City move in. These voles from all over the farm decided there was a lovely warm polytunnel they could come and live in. And so if we go inside our lovely polytunnel, this polytunnel, by the way, is from Polytunnel's Premier Polytunnels, and so there's probably only 2 lettuces that made it, because what would happen is the voles would come along and they would eat out the heart, and then of course the lettuces would die. Now along this backside we've got some radishes, and again they did really well overwintering and growing in here, but look at that. Vole. There's some that haven't been hit. That one that's all right. In fact, let's pull that one up. Hello. There's nothing quite like, I know, nothing quite like you. There's also nothing quite like taking veg straight out the ground. And eating it. Yum. But as I say, most of that crop were destroyed by voles. You can see how much warmer it is in here because of the state of the grass. The grass is really starting to grow already. So the polytunnel definitely needs some work. We did also have a little bit of storm damage. It just ripped some of these plastic cleats away, but that's something that I can fix. I am amazed how this polytunnel survived. As I say, it's from Premier Polytunnels, and the worst storm we've had in 30 years, and it made it. And it's super warm in here actually, it's lovely. So yes, we need to get to work on clearing all of this out, getting all of the cardboard back down in here, chopping this grass. There's a few, there's a few odds and ends of lettuces, but then they're no good. And there's a little bit of parsley up here that I planted, which is doing all right. And obviously the girls are currently enjoying a little bit of salad. As you can see here, the wind really took down all this staging that I hadn't finished. And also there was so much rain that the pond filled, underneath the pond, the whole of the pond filled with water, and the water pushed this entire pond up. So normally this pond would be sat at that level, but you can see it's floating at the moment on top of water. So I'm hoping once that gets enough water in the actual pond itself, it will weigh it down. So that's the state of kind of the market, the garden. We have got some flowers sort of on the way, which I will show you down here. It's a beautiful day today. It's the first day where it's actually felt spring-like. So this is our cut flower patch. I'm afraid I keep calling them pests, but they are just wildlife. But we had a beautiful row of wallflowers all the way down here. We had to cover them over because they also got seriously nibbled. So I'm just waiting for the warmth to come along and make them really start growing, and then I can undercover them. And then the other thing we have in this patch at the moment is some hesperus, which I planted out, and they are under this low tunnel. And you can see a couple of plants just here. And amazingly, the low tunnel is probably the only thing that stayed in place during the storm. The low tunnel and the polytunnel, everything else went everywhere. Now I am of course planning for a lot more flowers, and we have them here because my shed is not mouse proof. So we've got 3 trays of ranunculus that are getting to a point now where I can start to think about planting them out. We've got some sweet peas, which are starting to come through. These were originally in the shed, but the mice got into them and started nibbling all of the sweet peas. And then my anemones. Voles love anemones for some reason. So these are all anemones, and they were all in the shed. But as you can, I mean, they are coming up. We have got some vibrant green, but as you can see, there are lots of tooth marks. And this is all vole damage. And so it set all the plants back quite a bit. So at the moment, they're not even safe here. I'm having to pick them up and stash them away at night because they've just really taken a beating from the voles. I've also planted some broad beans, about 300, and I had them at home because I thought, let's take them away from voles and mice. And they started coming up, but I went out the other day and they were just, I kept them outside the whole time, but just outside my back door. Went out the other day, mice have found them, so they've probably eaten about half of them, so I'm going to have to re-sow a lot of broad beans. One area I'm really excited about is the entranceway where we put our raised beds, and it's just through the barn here. Here are most of the animals at the moment. The very vocal geese, ducks, silver appleyards, turkeys over the back, our pregnant ewes and our pregnant nanny goat, and then some more of our goats over the back there. But I've gradually been landscaping the bit out the front of this barn, so that when eventually our entrance will be around the back of this container, and this will be sort of a parking area. And so we've got fencing along here. Here are our piggies who are loving some sunshine. And look, the first of the daffodil beds is coming out. It looks great. And is that a bee? Is there a bee? There are bees. A warm day and the bees have come to the daffs. Now I was slightly disappointed that these daffs came so early, and also they've got such short stems because I can't really cut them and use them for bouquets. However, the flip is we've just seen bees there, and if bees are using that for nectar, that's fine. I'm quite happy to have these daffs just as a nectar-rich plant for the bees this spring. And of course, the nice thing about daffs is they're perennial, so these will stay here and they'll come up again next year. Maybe next year we'll get longer stems. But we've got loads of different varieties in here. So this is one variety, and we've got more varieties along here. And then the second bed I planted about 2 weeks later. So obviously it's about 2 weeks behind. So these guys are just starting to come up. And then we planted our tulips at the very end. And so they are now starting to come through as well, which is really, really good. So we've got these two big beds. And then along the back of the fencing, we've got trees. So these apple trees were gifted to me. Now, of course, I put them in and the deer came along and nibbled them. So I've quickly thrown some protectors on them. This one in particular has suffered quite a bit of damage. And you can see the stem should be this grey, and this is where it's all been eaten. But we'll see. It may make it. I've put in a couple of gooseberry bushes just down here because I didn't know what to do with them. And then there's there's a forsythia here and another forsythia here, and those in the flowering currant. And those over time will become really nice big plants which will have loads of flower in spring that I can cut for Easter bouquets. There's some Photinia back there and the eucalyptus, and then down here I don't think these have started to go through yet. These are peonies. I've got 3 peonies here. They were originally down here, but this just became too waterlogged, this area down here. There are three more over here. Are they coming through? Oh, you can start. So there's some buds. There's a peony bud there. So there's 3 more peonies here, and then there are another 3 peonies here, of which actually there's I'm right in the light. There's a nice bud there. Apple tree, smoke bush, and then the pear, plum, cherry and apple that we put in along here. So I'm really happy with how this area is looking, and I think once, obviously we've still got to do the stock fencing and put the gates in, but I think it's going to look really, really pretty, and especially in 2 or 3 years time when these trees have grown a bit, be just a stunning area to come to when you arrive at the farm. It's days like this that it feels like spring is definitely coming, and we do need it after this bad weather we've had. We desperately, for our minds and our souls, we need spring. But of course that means March is almost here, and the sowing season will be upon us, and it will be a mad next few months as we get this garden full of fantastic colour for the flowers and veggies and life. And you have to check out the farm tour from last August when this patch was absolutely teeming with beautiful flowers and lots of yummy vegetables. So check that out and you'll see what's to come later in this year, although it'll be bigger and better.